This is Coach Rick, and you are listening to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. Welcome. We're glad to have you. The Bald Truth Leadership Podcast is the place where you get the straightforward, no-nonsense, no-holds-bars idea on leadership, growth, both personally and professionally. The Bald Truth Leadership Podcast is brought to you by the Peak Performance Group. I'm your host, Coach Rick, certified executive business coach and chief coaching officer for the Peak Performance Group, where we help people and organizations align and maximize their potential. Today is just someone that I have so much respect for, and I've known such a long time, and he's many, many years. In fact, he was what I consider one of my very early mentors, and has given me such great advice and direction over the years that I wanted to bring him on and let him share some of his wisdom with you. Today, we're welcoming Glenn Gugiolo. He's a partner at Lady Bird Ventures, a real estate investment firm in Austin, Texas, and the former president of Fox Sports and the satellite sports networks. Welcome to the Bald Truth, Glenn.
Hey, Rick, it's welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Oh, it's so good to see you, man. I'll tell you what, you started off, we met probably close to 30 years ago, and you were my boss, and you kind of just took me under your wing for who knows why, but you did for some reason or another.
Oh, so, because I recognize potential.
Oh man, you're far too kind. This is not this is about you. It's not about me, but it was so interesting how we ended up meeting through work. You guys hired me out of the bar business, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And I knew that business real well, but you knew the sports and the programming business and all of that. So let's talk about that just a little bit, and then we'll jump into some fun stuff.
Okay.
So what was your perspective when you started that? We started that you were hiring everybody. So this is a better one. When you began to hire all these sales guys for the satellite sports network, what was going on in your head?
Well, I'm not really sure. I have two quick hiring stories. I mean, as I look back on my career, especially with satellite sports networks, the one thing that I did exceedingly well was hire people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I always had a philosophy that you hire people smarter than yourself. So I always look for brilliant, bright guys, but hiring you, Todd Mirko.
Yeah.
I could probably list about 6 other people who went on to be presidents and industry leaders. And they, I was kind of like the proving ground. They'd work for me, and then corporate would grab them and take them into the corporate environment. So, smarter than myself is probably one of the criteria that we used.
Okay.
I also believed that you could do it yourself. I didn't use recruiters or anything like that. So
okay. So I had a lot of experience in the bars, both imbibing and running them. So it was fun for me. I think we had a lot of time. I tell people that was my favorite job in the world. Matter of fact, it was the best job on the face of the planet. I got to go to sports bars, watch sports, and drink beer, and they paid me to do this.
Yes.
I mean, it's a guy's dream job. It was amazing.
Isn't that the truth? It was.
It was fun. Because we hired a lot of people. I was like number 2 or 3 employee from the commercial side. So as you talk about hiring, as you were going out and you were sending Buzz out, and you're sending your other managers out, what's your philosophy on hiring?
Well, I had one overriding philosophy, and that was always hire people smarter than yourself.
Okay,
and
makes sense.
And that really helped me, because if I look back on my career, the one thing I probably did best was hire people.
Okay.
People I hired, Todd Mirko, Dana, and a whole host of other people like you went on to be industry leaders, presidents of sports teams. They achieved great things. And, I said, They did great things for me while they worked here. Some short, some came in, made their chops and moved on in a year and a half, and some stayed 3. But there was a revolving door of talented people.
It's amazing. I think that's from our listeners. What they can learn is hire better than you. It's hire that.
Yes.
One of the things that I used to love, that just absolutely I loved doing, was the fact that you would take me to lunch. You didn't actually make me buy, or you didn't actually buy my lunch. You made me buy my own lunch, so I had to earn it. But we would always go to lunch. We would go down to the little burger joint down the road with the management team, and I was fresh out of the bar business, and I had no clue about how to work in a corporate environment. I had nothing. So you would take me, and I would just listen. I would listen to what you all were saying. And there was one thing. There's a lot of little tidbits that I got from you. But one thing you said to me, I came to you one day. I said, "Tell me this." And I didn't get it at that point, because I didn't even know how to read a P&L at that point. I said, "Would you rather have a 1% bottom line of a $50 million company or a 10% bottom line of a $5 million company?" And your answer was the $5 million company. I was like, "What do you mean?" Because for my brain, 50 million was more than 5, usually, in my math. But I said, why that? Because you have a healthier company. And that made such an impact on me, and it's helped me today, is have a healthy company. So as you began to, with Satellite Sports Networks, as you did that, how did you keep it healthy? I guess that's something that would help some of our listeners know. How do you keep it healthy?
Well, I first of all had a great mentor myself in Ed Frazier.
Sure.
And Ed was he was one of those kind of managers who would do things like, give his top management team Spanish lessons. So once a week we would take Spanish lessons, and he paid for my taking the course, The Power of Positive Thinking, all these educational things.
Sure.
I started running. I was the only employee. He hired me. He rehired me to come in and start up Satellite Sports Networks. And he said, "You should run the game." And I went, "What?" He says, "Yeah, the great game of business," and handed me a book.
I remember that.
And so I read the book on the great game of business, and it was a sterling management system. Mm-hmm. Based upon one of mass communication with all of your employees and empowerment.
Yeah.
That's what probably made SSN really work, was that every employee knew where they stood in the organization, mm-hmm. their contributions, and were empowered to make a difference.
So, that's funny, because I have that book. It's either there or on the shelves behind me. There's usually tons of books. And I still remember you making me read that book. And every once in a while I quote it. Of course, it was a great book, and you remember that much of it. Yeah. But it was, with Jack Stack, which is the coolest name ever.
Absolutely.
How do you not be cool with a name like Jack Stack?
That's true.
And the one quote I use out of that book when I talk to clients, I talk to people in business, is even the guy who tightened the last nut on the last wrench on the engine, because they remanufactured motors. Right. He knew what the effect of him doing it right or not doing it right was going to be to the bottom line.
Exactly.
That blows me away.
And that so works, because if you give employees an idea of their contribution and their expense and their mm-hmm. importance to an organization, they can work with confidence. It's like, I gave out the monthly financials to every employee. Mm-hmm. Once a week, we had a huddle. And at the height, we had 145 employees in 17 states, and everyone got on the conference call once a week.
And I remember that. And it's so interesting. And that's one of the philosophies we use now when I do my consulting, and we've called it business acceleration. That's kind of our catchphrase. We want to work companies, help them grow and accelerate, is the communication piece. And that's probably where part of it came from, because, as over the course of time developing this and thinking, I don't know where some of this stuff came, but it's just here, and it goes, oh, where'd I find this? It's
Isn't
like,
that the truth? Attribution is like almost impossible. Who knows
I don't know where
where
this
you
shit comes
pick
from.
this up?
So that's what I do is you've got to communicate. And I've got clients is every day you have a huddle. It's a 5-minute huddle. Everybody gets a minute. That's one of my, I get it down to that tiny of a thing. And then once a week, your management team gets together and they talk about what's going on, and they keep it to a half hour, no matter how big the team is. Everyone they just cut the minutes up, and you got to be good. So that's some cool stuff. So, all right. So tell me, you mentioned Ed Frazier, who's a legend in the media industry. So, and how he started you at Satellite Sports Networks, but how did you get started in the media industry? And kind of give us a quick journey to having a real estate investment company.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Well, first of all, I got a degree in radio, television, film from the University of Texas in '75. Okay. And so I was in the media business. That was my degree. And luckily for me, I lived in Texas where there weren't unions. So I could transverse from all different disciplines inside the television business without worrying about having to change unions or doing anything like that. So I learned everything about video production. I ran camera, I ran audio, I did set decoration, I did lighting, studio. I spent 3 years at minimum wage doing everything that you needed to do to make a television production work, and ended up getting a job as a director of a late night TV show.
Oh, how cool.
A TV station in Houston called K-Dog. So K-D-O-G.
I remember that. I lived in Houston in the 80s, so I remember that.
Yeah. So anyway, so K-Dog had a big production studio, and that solid background just really aided me throughout the rest of my career, because I knew what the audio guy was doing. I knew what the lighting guy was doing. I knew what the assistant director was doing or not doing or supposed to be doing. And I luckily worked my way up through to producer and eventually to executive producer. And once you're an executive producer and you're hiring announcers and producers for live sporting events, you end up with management responsibility. And, I ended up negotiating sports rights deals with the Houston Rockets. And management said, well, if you're going to pay that much, you damn sure better make a profit. So we're going to make you GM. And your job depends upon profit for this investment in television rights. And I was in management. And it's funny, I didn't know it at the time, but it takes as much creativity to be a good manager as it does to be a TV producer.
So, isn't that the truth? Because it's always trying to look at how do you use your talent. I think it's about talent. Leadership is about using the talent correctly, and how do you put the people in? Because one of the philosophies we have here is 4-stage when you run a business: people, strategy, execution, and managing your cash. And you talk about how do you manage P&L. We'll talk about that in a minute. But really, how do you get the right people to do that? And that's really kind of the cool part, is you were able to hire some really fun people. I got to tell you, I've got so many stories, and I still tell stories that are pretty funny when you think about them. And I know I'm going to make you laugh a couple of times. But it was the right people that they fit. And then we were a motley crew of salespeople. We were a very motley crew.
Let me tell you, speaking of those stories, that's one of my little hobbies now in retirement, is that I'm writing those stories down. So I'm trying to memorialize some of them. So.
Well, anytime we'll sit and we'll chat. Matter of fact, next time I get down to Austin, I think I owe you a pizza and a beer or something. And we'll do it. My funniest story is, what was his name? The Australian dude, Mike something. He lived up in New York. He was our sales guy. Crazy Australian.
What was his name? I'm drawing a blank right now, but I know.
When we had our first big sales meeting, 40 sales guys come in from around the country. We stayed at that hotel down by the ballpark, where the ballpark is right now, and we put all of our drinks on his tab. And when he checked out, he went, "What?" And Tom Lynch looked at him and said, "You must have had a lot to drink. Or I can't pay for that. That's not in the budget." and he blew a gasket.
Ah,
Because we were putting for 2
that's
days, we were
him.
putting all our drinks on his tab.
That's funny. Hey,
There's some good
you know,
stuff.
one of the things you were talking about employees, I just flashed upon. I had one rule, or a rule that everybody had to live by, and that was nobody got promoted unless they had groomed a replacement for their position.
Wow, that's great advice.
And it really worked so well because it kept people from hoarding information. It kept managers developing the people underneath them because they knew that for them to go up, there had to be somebody immediately to step into their slot. And I worked like a champ.
That's great. No, okay, so where did you learn it? Because there's some good examples of that I've seen over the years of one of them is teach the man below you your job and learn the job of the man above you. So there's a dual responsibility for every individual. And it's cool because the guy above, he's supposed to teach the guy below, but the guy below is also trying to learn it. So they're coming together and vice versa. And what it is, so where did that come from? That's amazing.
Well, you're asking for attribution, and that's probably a problem because I'm not sure where that came from now. I would probably just give Fraser credit for it.
Okay, that's good.
Mention that, and I probably adopted it because I was pretty good at adopting smart things Ed said. So.
Well, no, and same thing. Like some of the things that you've shared with me over the years is I steal them. I still use them. Right. I told you that. 50 million, 5 million. I said, okay, so here's why you want a healthy company. I learned this from Glenn. And that was all attributed to, I guess, putting yourself in the moment. Because I didn't have to go to lunch with y'all, but I wanted to know. I knew that was a great place for learning. That was not a formal learning process. And one of the things that I do really appreciated when we worked together was, like Ed, for you always encouraged me to take that class, to find that thing. And that's where I call myself a personal development junkie, which led to what I do now as a business coach. Is part of that was it's your fault. Part of that is that I took that and I would anything. If I could take a class, boom, I was in. That was it. So and I attribute some of that to you. So a couple questions, thanks. So what took you from the president of Satellite Sports Networks and Fox Sports, and what some of the things you learned along the way? So how did you take a startup? You said you were the first employee. You were You were the guy.
Yes.
How do you take a startup business from nothing, zero, you have no revenue, to a multi-million-dollar? Because we did pretty good. After
it was
10
at
years.
its height. We did 160 million. So
yeah. So how do you take a 0 to 160? And I know we only have 30 minutes to do this, but in a nutshell.
First of all, to quantify that, you got to remember we were in the sports business. Mm-hmm. Okay, we were in sports television, so we had a product that occasionally could be indispensable. Mm-hmm. If your team was number one and they were playing number two, everybody that followed that team had to watch that game. Okay. Sure. So, you had something that was in high demand. And you also have to understand for your audience here, we're talking about entrepreneurial activity here, not entrepreneurial.
Okay. Explain that.
So in other words, I didn't have to raise the money to do this expansion. This mm-hmm. wasn't a personal endeavor. We were spending Warner Communication money. Warner had just completed their third year of Atari, and they had banked so much money. They had banked $100 million, and that was the money that they couldn't spend or waste or anything. It just cascaded to the bottom line. And an old New York Giants coach, Ali Sherman, was commissioned by Warner Communication to start up regional sports networks. And he came out and started up 3 networks, of which Ed was the general manager of the Dallas office, and he hired me as his vice president of programming and production. And, we went on from there. So it was so I'm sort of getting off track here a little bit, but you had to be in having the resources.
Okay, that makes sense.
That
Makes
was
a
the
ton of sense.
start. And then I left there, and then Ed came back and said, okay, we now have 23 regional sports networks, of which the cable is their primary distribution, but they also have the rights to deliver via satellite.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, the satellite was a bud, a big ugly dish. It was those 10-foot dishes out
Yep.
there. And we set about scrambling all of those satellite signals and then charging an admission to view them. And that was a built-in market that helped a lot to growing this business. And then, of course, DirecTV and Dish Network and
Sure.
the small dishes came along. So you had a mushrooming marketplace. Okay, Dish and DirecTV overbuilt the entire cable business in like 3 years.
What it sounds like is you had a in-demand product, highly in-demand sports. I mean, who doesn't like sports? And you had a distribution method to get it out that was different, and you had control of that.
Yes.
Well, that's a pretty solid business model.
No, it was really great, but and we could have screwed it up, but we didn't. So it was a great ride because as the market mushroomed,
Sure.
we were able there to satisfy the sports demand for that video watching marketplace. And we were able to we eventually had deals with every baseball, MLB, NBA, and hockey team in the nation, along with contracts with the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and a minor contract with the NFL. So
yeah, and of course I was part of that with you as you were going through and got to travel around and from Florida to Texas to Minneapolis. I worked in all those markets, even down into St. Louis for a little bit. Opening some offices, and it was fun for me as kind of a novice. I knew nothing about the media business. I knew about the bar business. You ask me how that runs, I got that one down. But it was so interesting learning, how do we put these two together? How do they put together and make them work? And so I got to meet. Here's the fun part: I got to do some cool stuff doing it. And some of it you may remember, some of you may go, I didn't know that. But I got to sit at the Minnesota Stars when they were up in Minneapolis. I got to sit in a production truck for a Stanley Cup playoff because we were producing it. And I got to sit out in the back in the big trailer. I had never done that before. Most people just sit there, and we had great seats if we wanted to. They were seats in 11th row behind a goal or something. But we sat out in the truck and watched how this is produced, and that was just amazing. So for you, what are some of the fun things that you got to do, whether it's meet celebrities or you got to do some cool stuff like go into production, or you got to go behind the scenes for this that you experienced with Satellite Sports or Fox Sports?
Well, I would have to say all of it. I mean, I've spent the first 15 years of my career as a sports producer. So I traveled the nation going and being the guy and the producer in that remote truck and doing Major League Baseball games and NBA games and college football and basketball games and crisscrossing the nation. At the time we would say I wouldn't trade a live production for a round of golf.
Yeah.
Because there's just nothing more fun than doing live television. I mean, it's ongoing. You have to make it happen. You make mistakes and you keep going, and you document what happens on the court or the field, and it's just spectacularly fun.
What a cool metaphor, though. Isn't that like life?
Yeah.
You make mistakes, you just put your head down and keep going.
You do, and it's, and you can't worry about it because you're live. So getting tangled up in, the fact that, we took the wrong camera at one time or something. You just can't do it. In fact, I'll have a quick story about that.
Okay.
We're producing the Texas OU game. And back in the early days, the television networks could only pick a game twice. And we were in the third year, and none of the networks could carry the Texas OU game. Plus, they were not having a good year. So the rights to that game fell down to us because we were the cable guys. Yeah. And we were definitely second-class citizens in those days. So we got to produce the game. And we didn't get to carry it live. We had to carry it on a tape-delayed basis. So we're doing this, and this is going to be – I'm producing this, and it's going to be the perfect telecast. I worked hard. I got all the right announcers, and I got everything all set up. And we're doing the launch, and we throw it down to our on-field announcer for his little bit during the opening. And at the same time, the Boomer Sooner wagon comes out of the voluntary and goes onto the field and runs right by my announcer. The wheel picks up the mic cord, and he's in the middle of his broadcast, and the mic goes, whoo, and it's gone. And we're going, what? And just, and from then on, I went, okay, this won't be a perfect telecast. Let's just keep going.
What a great blooper to find, if you could ever find that. I'm sure it's in archives someplace. Oh, my God.
In those days, it was on 2-inch helical cans videotape.
Oh, my goodness. I know. It's
sure they have those playback machines anymore. Outside of a museum.
I know. Well, I keep clearing the house out of stuff and the VHS, and hell, we don't even use DVDs anymore. It's all streaming. It's crazy how it's gone. It's interesting. Talk about streaming and talk about a mutual friend, Matt Schmidt. Talking about Matt. What a smart hire that was. And he was, and for us as old guys, at that point, he was a young kid. Now, we've all matured, families and all that, but he made a great move when we shut down the Fox Sports Direct moved. He moved over to work with Mark Cuban. How about that?
Matt Schmidt's an interesting story because, and I hope I'm saying this properly, but he was the brother of our receptionist. And so she said, hey, my brother needs a job. I said, bring him in. And we put him to work in the phone bank. We had a small telemarketing operation selling to consumers, not to sports bars. We had several facets to this distribution, and he was horrible. And we went, okay.
But he was brilliant when it came down to the computer. And I know he was the one that we learned how to do all the blackout rights, all that when we were learning all that. He was our go-to guy.
And what happened was we ended up moving him 3 times. And when he moved into the operation department, all of a sudden it clicked. And the work he needed to do fit his strengths, and the man went on. He's one of my smart hires. It was at the time. Oh, yeah. Because he still runs his own company in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you touch base with him much.
We're LinkedIn. We're getting. I reached out to him. It's been a couple of years, but I mean, I remember back when Mark Cuban is the guy he went to work for when it was broadcast.com or AudioNet or one of those.
It was broadcast.com. And by the way, I like the way you describe it. I describe it a little bit differently. My line is, and then Mark Cuban raided my operations department and took the top 5 people.
Okay.
And left me floundering for about 90 days until I got them all replaced.
Yeah.
But all 5 of those guys ended up being millionaires.
Oh, yeah. They took care. Because I remember, and one of my personal stories is I knew something about it. I said, well, let me buy some of this stock. And it was $20-$30. And my stockbroker's going, man, you probably need to sell this stuff because it looks like it's just kind of sitting. I said, no, hold. I know it's going to be good. And it went up to 85 or 90 or something over the course of time. I said, see, I told you. And it was right at the end of the year. And he says, look, it's time to make a move. So now taxes, all that, you probably want to sell this now. said, are you sure? He says, yeah. So I sell it. And then I met with a friend up in Addison, and we were having lunch. And I looked up, and broadcast.com was bought by Yahoo for $297 a share. And I just spit my beer out. I went, I was 7 days too soon.
Oh, that's too funny. I have a similar story. I don't know if you remember Kevin Smith.
Oh, yeah, sure. I've seen Kevin.
He was our VP of marketing, and he was a childhood friend of Mark Cuban back to Indiana, Illinois, or wherever he came from. And when they were taking broadcast.com public, he got on the friends and family list and got 5,000 shares of stock. And I said, get me on the list, get me on the list. So I had met with Mark Cuban a couple of times, and we were doing a streaming trial with him. And so he was using some of our satellite content to use as raw material. And he went, yeah, we'll put him on the list. And, there was, I don't know, 2,500 shares of stock. And so the launch day comes, and I get a call right before they launched the IPO, and he says, hey, they had to pull back, and you ended up getting dropped from the list, and my number of shares dropped in half. So I was that close.
You know what? And that's the fun part of this, because life, we make those mistakes, but we keep going. And I love the analogy. I may steal that. I'll attribute it, at least for the second or third time. Then after that, I own it. That's what happens, right? So it's like a live broadcast. You just got to keep going. Whether you hit the road bump. One of the analogies that I'm using, because we run the Emerging Leaders Academy for the State of Texas Concrete Association. That's kind of where we're at now. And we're in the concrete business, teaching young leaders what and how to act, and how to grow, and how to become that next generation. I use the analogy because it's Texas. I said, I started in Fort Worth, and I'm driving to San Antonio. I'm already to San Antonio. I've already driven through Temple, Waco, Austin, New Braunfels. I know where the cops are. I know where the potholes are. I know where the truck through the tread. You're still leaving Fort Worth as a young leader. You haven't seen all the pitfalls and the potholes. So listen, you don't see yourself leading that many people because you may be a frontline employee, but you will at some point. I didn't see myself leading anybody when I started my sales job with you. And, how many years later, I was running half the country, Canada and Mexico, for a publicly traded company. When I was with Alpha Wire, I had 27 people all over the country. I was responsible for, almost half the revenue of this company. I had no clue that would ever happen. So we see it in our young leaders. And so that's the analogy I use. But I love the one that's live. You just got to keep going. So it sounds like you've met some fun, famous people along the way. Mark Cuban's one. You've had interaction with Mark.
That is true. Mark Cuban is one.
Anyone else that of note, of notoriety?
Well, like I said earlier, we had a contract with the NFL. And so we were handling all of their operations for the NFL Sunday Ticket.
Okay.
I tried to get those rights, but DirecTV outbid me by $95 million, or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, but they couldn't do it without our operations department. So we hired out and did all their technical configurations for the satellite scramblers. And therefore, for 6 years in a row, the NFL invited me to the Super Bowl. And at the Super Bowl in Miami, we were in the NFL box sitting next to Don Shula. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, how cool is that? Now that's one of the fun things you get to do as you travel around, and you get to meet different people. Like I said, when I got to go back, I call it backstage with some of the production stuff when I was traveling around working with you. And there's the players, and you go, I don't remember one off the top of the head, but it's like, oh, look at that. I watched him play, or he's just going to have a good game, or he had a great game last week. How cool was that? You're standing next to greatness. He'll be in the Hall of Fame, whatever it might be. So think about building culture. You built and now the media business is pretty competitive. I mean, now what's the song? It's 256 channels and nothing's on. we probably have more than that now with the way they've split and it's digital. And in a competitive business, working in a company, how do you build the right culture? What's a snapshot of here's how you build culture? Do these 3, 5, 10, I don't know, whatever it is, things that you recommend?
Well, I'm probably not going to give you the answer that your audience will be able to particularly use, because I was in the sports television business. I was in the media business. I used to have a rule that only happy people worked at Satellite Sports Network.
Okay.
Unhappy people worked elsewhere, because we were in sports television. We are working with all these incredibly talented teams and leagues. And if you can't be happy in that environment, you had to go somewhere, because happy people worked in this environment. And it's true. It was so much fun that I rarely had a problem with dissatisfaction, because at the end of the day, people were going, they were proud about where they worked and what they did and who they worked for. And so it was a little bit easier for us to develop a good culture because of the market we were in.
Okay. Yeah, it was, we always did have fun, but what a great piece of advice to give someone to say, hey, make it a happy place.
Absolutely.
Make it fun.
Now,
that's
that one I can give attribution to. That
Okay.
was absolutely a Fraser law.
Okay.
He was one who first told me, he said, listen, only happy people work here.
Yeah.
Unhappy people work elsewhere. And you make that, and you state it. I've said that, probably every employee heard me say that once or twice.
Yep.
Because it was a clear guideline to, hey, keep it in check.
Good. That's great advice for anyone listening. So, all right, we're getting a little close on time here. So I got a couple things. Is there anything that you'd like to promote for yourself, new business venture, a shout out, anything you'd like to promote while I've got you captive?
Well, not really, because I'm retired. However, I'm in Austin, Texas, and I have a wood shop, and I make sculptures, and I do all sorts of stuff. And the middle 2 weekends in May is the West Austin Studio Tour.
Okay.
And that's where all the artists in West Austin open up their studios to the public, and the public travels around. There's 365 studios that are marketed, and the addresses, and you walk in and can see art in the environment in which it's created. So my wood shop will be open these 2 weekends in May, and second and third weekend. So if you're in Austin, come on by.
Okay. What's the name of the shop, and give us some so someone can find it?
Uncommon Wood is the name of the shop.
Okay.
And it's a West Austin Studio Tour. And, if you just Google West Austin Studio Tour and Uncommon Wood, you can track down my address on Avenue B.
How perfect. How awesome. I love that. I've got one of my partners in one of the books he wrote. He turns wood.
I do. So, I have a lathe. I turn wood.
He does some cool bowls and stuff too. So, all right, I've got 3 questions. And so I'm going to throw these out to you. I hope I don't throw you off a little bit, but I always have what I call Coach Rick's bald truth questions. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
So here it is. You're having a dinner party, and you get to invite 5 people. There's 6 people total, yourself included. You get to invite 5 people. Now, they can be anybody in all of history. They can be dead. They can be alive. They just can't be anybody who hasn't been born yet, because we don't know who they are. So anyone who's ever been alive, from this point forward, they can be alive, dead, famous, not famous, whatever it is. Who do you invite? What 5 people do you invite?
Yikes. Oh, I'm going to probably be boring here. But I'm going to invite Ed and Gloria Fraser.
Okay.
Because I have very sporadic communication with the mentor that brought me up through life, through business life.
Okay.
And I would have Rick Colster and plus one come in, because I know there will always be lively conversation. And of course, Judy, my wife,
Of course.
would be here because she always keeps me grounded. So
Well, that sounds like
that would
that's
be
a
the
dinner
six
party
of
we can
us.
make happen. I think we can make that happen.
That's a good point. That is true. It's
So
feasible.
we probably could. I'd love to do that. So, all right. Second question. Articles being written about you after you're gone. What's the title? What's the headline of this? You're gone. There, somebody's writing an article about you. What's the headline?
Why? No, okay.
Okay. Is that it? Why?
Why? Oh, I don't know. One of my little hobbies in retirement, one of the big keys to retirement is staying interested and busy. And not only do I have a workshop where I build, little wood sculptures
those
like
are cool.
these in the backyard, and I write down stories that I've, had from my business work. I also, I like to collect aphorisms. So I love pithy statements,
Okay.
things like truth is a bully everyone pretends to like. And I would say the title of the book will be An Aphorism for All Seasons.
An aphorism. Okay, excellent. Good. So last one, last bald truth question for you. Each morning, and you might want to, you can go back and say what you did in the past, or because you're retired now, but what do you do each morning to get yourself up, set yourself up for a good day, for a successful day? What do you do?
Well, okay, let's break this into past and present.
Okay, fair enough.
In the past, I found one little trick that worked for me really well, and that was get to work and complete a very small task. Just start something and complete it. And so I would write a letter. In those days, you had a secretary, and she would type up letters and post them out. And I would just complete one task. And it's amazing the forward momentum you get, because once you've done one thing, all of a sudden the next thing's easier and easier.
Okay.
And instead of spinning your wheels getting started, just that little piece of traction got you going. Now today, I wake up and I have a fairly consistent routine. I do anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes of meditation. And
Okay.
I there's some prayer in there, but primarily, I'm calming my mind. I'm getting the chatter that goes into my mind away. It's not like trying to be a Zen master. I'm not trying to stop anything.
No, but
I'm
there's
just
noise
trying
all the time.
to slow down my mind, because when that happens, clarity comes through. And it's not clarity about what color shoes I need to buy. It's clarity about big things that are going on and how to approach things that I'm doing. And, like I'm trying to market my West Austin studio tour. I get clarity on things that I need to move forward. And then I go and I do some exercise. And in fact, in studying meditation, I found out that there is a way to do what's called walking meditation.
Oh,
And
really?
there's actually a program of breathing and walking and clearing your mind at the same time. That's I'm just now exploring. But anyway, that's keeping me.
Okay. So clear your mind, get some exercise, maybe put them together. That's great. So, hey, Glenn, this has been amazing. I thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and just sharing. It's been a while. We definitely need to make it next time I get to Austin, get together. And,
well, Rick, I am flattered you ask. So,
heck, like I said earlier, you were one of my early mentors, and I've got a few people in my life that I stay in touch with. You're one of them, and we don't talk every week, but we do stay in touch. And there's just those men that I think we all need, and men or women, depending on what you need. But there's men that I need in my life that were instrumental in getting me to where I am. Getting us here to the Peak Performance Group as an executive coach, doing what I do now, that set that foundation for me, because everything is foundational. So I thank you for that. You've been a blessing in my life, and I surely appreciate that. So,
well, thank you, Rick. It was great.
Absolutely. So, hey, this has been The Bald Truth with Coach Rick of the Peak Performance Group, the company that helps people and organizations reach their potential. If you're looking for a way to grow your organization, whether it's sales or strategic direction, the Peak Performance Group coaches can help you grow with our proven business acceleration process. Call us at 817-748-7425 or visit www.mypotentialplus.com, and we'll connect you with the right coach for you.